Hello. Today I'm going to be doing Act 1 review of the Being and Knowing class, and I'm going to attempt trying to describe what we've been learning or what we have learned to someone who has never taken a philosophy class, who's a non-philosopher, and essentially taking a skill that I learned from psychology way back, which was writing as if I was talking to a 7-year-old. They have a general understanding of words and stuff like that, but if I were to use words like projection, depression, neurotransmitters, etc., they would not have any idea what that means. So to kind of get started into it, the class we talked about this big guy named Descartes. One thing that's the funniest things I remember learning about Descartes, which is irrelevant to his theory, is his name, which just sounds, Descartes, DE, and then CART, but it's spelled and it would, based on its spelling, it would sound like Descartes. And he became very famous as being one of the biggest philosophers in philosophy. And what he created was this whole philosophy of skepticism. What essentially Descartes did one day was he decided on his own to really be skeptical about all his beliefs, thoughts, and just pretty much his perception of the world, what he thought was real. For example, I think one that we think about, that could be a good example, is the sun coming out every day. I think science, we do know why the sun comes up, but with Descartes, it was more about what is my foundations for believing the sun will come up tomorrow. Well, I believe it's going to come up tomorrow because it came up yesterday. But what's that based on? And it's kind of really reducing your beliefs and thoughts to what they are. And I think first with Descartes, he noticed that how our perceptions are prone to being fallible. This first affects, I think, a large part of our epistemology, of what we believe in. Epistemology means pretty much the study of knowledge, what we know. And what we know is, like, for example, the sun's going to come out. Well, if Descartes is skepticizing the sun's going to come out, and let's just say he finds a way to do that, then what the heck do we know about the world? Then further with metaphysics, which I've always struggled with defining this, but pretty much the meta of physics, which to further, we know physics as explains how the world works. We think of, Newton's laws, gravity, etc. But now with metaphysics, kind of more on the being in of something, of like also how it fundamentally works on abstraction. What abstract means is, in kind of in our head, these weird things. And what's metaphysical, if we're going to use an example, let's just say the human is physically, we have a body, we have fingers, feet, blah, blah, blah. But metaphysically, we would have a mind, or we would like to believe we do, theorize. And that's not necessarily physical, but it's metaphysical. I hope I made that clear. Connecting this to this whole idea of consciousness is so going back to the human is like we're looking at it, it has a mind, and what is that? How do we mentally work, right? Because we can't physically, to take more of a psychology approach, we have mental health and physical health. we go to the physical doctor for our physical health, but we don't necessarily go to them for our mental health, right? A psychiatrist or a psychologist would be better suited to address such a thing. And it's because it's a whole different type of physics, right? That the way the mind works, our brain. To now, let's akin that brain to being different to now more of something that's a bit more nuanced and abstract, like a thought, right? And that would be consciousness. And with Descartes, or sorry, let's just focus on on consciousness. Is we try to figure out what it is, right? What gives consciousness? And to now answer first the biggest question, what is consciousness? Well, put in very simple terms, consciousness is this whole thing about being able to feel good things and feel bad things. Be able to enjoy a popsicle on a hot day, but also feeling the pain if I step on a nail. And from what we learned from so far in the class is that we don't really have an idea of what consciousness is. So we have this kind of idea of how it works and everything, but yet we also don't know anything. And that just affects our whole epistemology of what the hell do we know? And that's similar with Descartes, as I mentioned earlier, him being a skeptic. He kind of just disbelieves all his foundational truths about the world because the foundations he found those truths rest on are prone to being fallible or wrong. And I then lead this to connecting with Descartes being a dualist, is that he believes that we have a mind and a body. The mind is separate from the body in the sense it kind of consists of our consciousness, our experiences. And the body is the extension of it's what connects with the external world, it's the extension of us. And in terms of how it relates to this concept we talk about, philosophical zombie, well, it connects because we've removed the mind, the consciousness from the body. To kind of bring this back for a second, because I mentioned philosophical zombie, a philosophical zombie is literally a zombie, what we think of, but not exactly the same. A philosophical zombie would be as if I were to imagine Rylan, myself, as another copy, except the difference is that he's not able to feel pain or pleasure, but he reacts exactly the same way. So, like, if you were to give him a popsicle on a hot day, maybe he'll respond acting like he enjoys it. But what it means to have consciousness is to genuinely feel and be able to experience that joy. Further, when a zombie would step on a nail, they wouldn't feel pain. Versus myself, I would actually feel pain and that conscious experience. And I think where it shows that if we can't really necessarily conceive of a philosophical zombie, or if we could, either way kind of presents an argument for dualism to show the separation between the body and the mind. And further, as they contend with materialists, I think it's a way of trying to grasp the mental, but not being able to in the physical realm. So overall, the class purpose, at least the way I found it, and not purpose, sorry, but the summary of Act 1 was we took from Descartes the skeptical approach towards our knowledge, which affects our epistemology, which is the study of knowledge, and also what we know of how the world works and its being, the metaphysics. And when we examine something like consciousness, which has to do with both fields, we notice that we don't really know how it works, which is the metaphysics, and further, that affects what we know, which is the epistemology. And then last is that we try to examine, the zombie this philosophical zombie that serves its purpose for dualists and materialists. In a sense, it examines the possibility of the mind being separate from the body. And whether can we really conceive of that and it being true. And I just will say is that it feels very weird to say that we can conceive of a philosophical zombie and then conclude from that that everyone in the world is possibly a zombie. And then, in a way, I guess what I didn't like about it, maybe it just takes this kind of magicalness away or beauty from the topic, from us making us human. Is like, if we're really not this conscious being, then it's kind of like, I think going back to Singer is what differentiates us from the animals. And I guess I mean that in the real sense of, are we just animals? I'm not really sure. Thank you.